Fight fans, welcome back to Carl Prusa MMA. Today we got a special guest for you. My guest getting ready. Big regional matchup, LFA 239, August 21st. He's taking out Manuel Exposito. He's one of the bright stars on the regional scene right now. Proud member of Team Bloodlines. He is Mr. Chris Mecate. Chris,
let's go.
My friend, how are you, brother?
I'm doing good. Yeah, fight week. It's been a while, so I'm excited for another fight week. Those feelings, getting those butterflies again and locking in, getting ready to scrap. It's been a while, but I feel really good.
Every fighter's different with this. For you, when do you really start feeling it?
Typically, talking about the fight, typically the week of that. We weigh in Thursday, fight Friday, but typically that, Sunday, I like to come back, go visit my mom, like almost like a little ritual where I go see my mom and my siblings on that weekend and kind of almost like I'm leaving for battle. Kind of go see my family, like, all right, I'm going to head out and do my thing, and I'll see you on the other side. So normally that weekend leading into the fight week is where I kind of start feeling like, all right, like, get my blessings and get ready to go scrap. So, yeah, typically on the Sunday, like today, is when I start to feel that fight week for sure.
Absolutely. The world of martial arts, especially in the United States, is really taken off. It's so mainstream now. There's a lot of these fans that watch it. Very few people understand what it's like, obviously, fighting on the regional scene. I feel like the casuals, they look at the McGregors and the Toporias and the Habibs, and they see the fame, the fortune, the glory. When you're battling on the regional scene, man, you're not making Conor McGregor money. You're staying up late. You're waking up early. It's hard to have a kid. It's hard to have a wife. You miss birthdays, weddings, Thanksgivings, dinners. What made you sit with this so long and sacrifice every day?
Can you repeat that last part you cut out at the very end? It was a great lead up, but the very end just cut out.
What's made you stick with this and not give up?
A few things, I guess. Maybe one, the way I was raised on, if you have something that you feel called to in your heart, you don't quit ever. And so, it honestly, for me, the way I've just thought about it is the more you sacrifice, the more you're given. So it's one of those things where, I maybe could have taken an easier route, maybe had easier opponents, but I fought UFC vets. I fought guys in the UFC, fought guys, Contender Series vets, Contender Series guys, in and out of the UFC. So, the sacrifices I've had to make to get to these fights and then fight these guys, I just know in my heart that I'm on the path and I've beaten some good guys and, train with good guys every day. So I just know whenever my time comes, it's going to come. And when it comes, it's going to be, probably more magnificent than I even ever imagined in my head. So it's self-belief. And then, doing it for the right reasons probably too, where, maybe it's almost taught me like, hey, if that's why you're doing it for the fame and the money and all that, then there's other things that are easier to be famous at and make more money doing. So it's kind of a little ego check. Like, yeah, I'm in it for the right reasons because I love fighting. I love what it does to me. I love how I feel when I do it. And then, you do that long enough, you do that for the right reasons, you'll get all the other stuff too, probably the fame and the money if you stay in it long enough. But that's not my why. So when it comes and I, receive it, I'll be stoked, but it's not going to, change my why for doing it. So I'm going to keep on trucking. That's why.
For you, is fighting more mental than is physical?
It is definitely mental. Absolutely. But, the physical is every day, but the physical is probably a little bit easier just because my whole life I've had an athletic career since 7 and competed at a high level since like 11, 12. So the physical part, I could block that out and just get to work every day. That's not that hard for me per se. So yeah, the mental part definitely is a huge part of fighting. The fear part, the why are you doing this, the sacrifices, the getting better in a bunch of ways, the entering that cage, seeing a dude across from you who just wants it as bad as you do and wants exactly what you want. And you got to go out there and, like they say, it's a quote where, forget who said it, but in order for me to go and accomplish my dreams, I have to crush yours. So, that's just the way it is. So a lot of it is mental, how you see it, how you approach it, what you're willing to give up to get it. So yeah, I would agree.
A lot of people don't realize, man, 20 years ago, this sport was not legal in every single state. People were calling it human cockfighting. Even when you first got into it in that 2016, 2017 time frame, it was not nearly as mainstream as what it is now. When you first got into it, do you have any stories of fighting in bars, sanctioned events, but bars, outside, rodeos, any crazy venues back in the day?
Oh, yeah. I fought, and like you said, made my amateur debut, I think 2017. I think I can't remember the exact date, but that's still pretty late in the game and relative. But yeah, I fought in Indian reservations. I fought in back of a horse stable out in the middle of nowhere, San Diego. I fought down in Mexico and TJ, in a backyard barn where who knows what kind of activities go on down there. And TJ, I mean Tijuana, Mexico. Fought in Indian reservations in Oklahoma. I fought in some events for sure. Definitely. Yeah, where you're, and then you know what though, it does add to the storyline, I guess, of MMA. Where I heard someone say once, they're like, when they got in MMA, they're like, I just had a dream of traveling the world and beating up its people. And I was like, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, we'll take you to some odd places and you get to go fight its people. So I could definitely say I've done that. I fought in Mexico a few times, fought in Indian reservations. It's gone pretty wild for sure. Done press conferences in bars in Virginia and stuff, but I've never thought, what am I doing here? I've always been like, all right, this is what you signed up for. Enjoy it.
When you first started watching this stuff back in the day, did you ever envision a time where this would become as big as it is right now?
No, but okay, so I started watching it in UFC 40, and I was a kid. I was a child. So UFC 40 was Shamrock versus Ortiz, and I was wrestling, and then, you just see guys. I got into it through seeing guys who were wrestlers become like superstar, or, what I thought at the time were superstars and winning fights. Chuck Liddell, Randy Couture, Tito Ortiz, all those guys were all college wrestlers. And so as a kid wrestler, I'm like, man, they did what I'm doing, and now they're these, badass fighters. But to think, so I was just in it because I was like, man, this is cool. And then I would go to school in third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade before the UFC, like you said, was mainstream. And I would tell all my friends, like, man, they watch baseball and soccer and basketball. And I was like, that's for the birds, bro. You got to watch this fighting stuff. This is where it's at. And they're like, fighting? Like, what do you mean? Like boxing? I'm like, no, it's called MMA. Like, they fight. There's not many rules. You get to do you could take them down. You could knee them. You could head kick them. You could punch them. You could choke them. And I remember I took a book to school that my parents got me for Christmas, like a UFC book. And I took it to school. And one of the teachers tried taking my book away because it was like a picture, it was an MMA book. And I was in sixth grade. And then my teacher was like, what's this? Like, what are you reading? And it was, it was like an old school MMA book. I just got it for Christmas. My parents knew I was into it. And I'm like, no, you're not taking it away. It's my book. My parents got it for me. She's like, what is this? Like, it's violent. There's blood. I'm like, you're not taking it. It's my book. Like, I got it for Christmas. This isn't some, crazy, whatever she was thinking it was, but there's blood and people getting beat up. And then it's just funny that, from middle school and a teacher tried to confiscate my book and, take me to the principal and if you ask my friends, they'll talk about it. Like, man, Chris was talking about this in like middle school, telling us. And we were like, what? Like, we watch, mainstream sports, basketball, baseball, football. And I was like, yeah, that's cool, but it's about fighting. Like, that's all that stuff's for the birds. I want to see who wins a fight. And it just comes, I was ahead of the trend about 20 years. So I was like, I knew this would blow up. I didn't know it'd be worldwide on Paramount and, sold for billions of dollars. But I did know that this was cooler than other stuff. I did predict that as a kid.
You're from the great state of California. When you look at it, so many big things MMA-wise have happened in California. So many big prominent figures come from California. I think you could put like a Mount Rushmore of guys for California and how they influence the sport. But for me, I have two, just my personal list. Uriah Faber, but I think the guy that really helped pave the way for that stay in fighting is Tito Ortiz. What does that guy do to you?
Oh, I mean, funny story. He was the first guy I ever met who, that I could recall, that was like a big MMA star, where I was at a wrestling camp and it was in Huntington Beach. They had this wrestling camp at this college, and it was where he wrestled at in college. And he stopped by after this wrestling camp was over. And, I'm a kid. I'm in, I don't know, maybe second, third grade. And, he's a 6'4" big dude. He has like a presence. And especially when you're a kid. And I'm like, who's this guy? And then he rolled out like a TV and put in a VHS. And he was promoting one of his fights. I don't even remember who he's fighting. But he was like, hey, like, I'm Tito Ortiz, and you guys should watch my fight. And he was handing out like trading cards. And he put one of his like highlights on a VHS. And when you're a kid and you've never seen MMA and there's no internet, and then you see UFC and him bashing people, and there was like a highlight reel, I was shocked. I was like, what is this? And remember, he gave a speech, and then he goes, wrestling helped me get here. At the very end of his speech, he said, like, wrestling helped me get here. And I was like, wait, we just did 1,000 double legs and single legs and, stand-ups on bottom. That helped you get to do this. And it was him, mountain guys just beating him up. And I was like trying to connect the dots. But I remember he said that. And so he was one of the major first influences in my mind in MMA for sure, Tito Ortiz. I know people give him a hard time, because of some of his interviews and his speeches and stuff he says, but I don't care what anyone says. Back in the day, he was a superstar. You just had to watch it back in the day. If you got into it later after that, then you won't understand. But if you were watching it back then, he was a star. And like you said, California guys, his nemesis, Chuck Liddell, another California guy, another college wrestler, and they helped, the Iceman and then the Bad Boy, and they had the flames on the shorts versus the ice on the shorts. And they helped make that sport rise. So with Faber too. And then, my mentor, Cub. So yeah, California's put on a lot of great fighters. I think California's a fighting state. We're into fighting out here for whatever reason. People like to fight. But yeah, Tito Ortiz influenced me major. And I actually told him that. I fought in UFL. I fought Jose Delgado in UFL, and he was one of, I think, the investors or promoters at the time. And he was at the fight. Then after the fight, I go, hey, man, you don't know this, and you don't even remember, but I was a little kid when you came to do this. And he was, like, super cool about it. But I doubt he remembers because, I mean, he's probably done 1,000 of those. But I was like, I was a kid at wrestling camp, and you rolled out a TV and showed us your fights. And you influenced me to do it. Now I'm here talking to you. So I was able to tell him that decades after. But, yeah, Tito was a superstar.
Now, you just mentioned Cub Swanson, obviously your head coach now over at Bloodlines. There's so many great talent on that team. We talked a little bit before the interview, but you're training every single day with guys like Richie Miranda, Le'Veon Douglas, Danny Silva, a bunch of other killers. How did you get connected with Cub? How did this all emerge?
I moved back. So I went amateur in Virginia, and I was 6-0 as an amateur, and that's where I wrestled in college, and then I was coaching out there. And then I wanted to go pro, but I knew the pro scene out there wasn't that strong. So, and I'm from California. So the move back home, miss my family, want to see my family again and start getting back here, go pro. So I moved out here and I was just moving around, trying to train, meet guys, get in the mix. And then I went to training lab one day and Cub was there. And I remember Cub gave me rounds and he was super nice about it. He could have really, put it on me if he really wanted to, if he wanted to kick my ass, and he was very pleasant and beat me, but didn't hurt me, which I owe him one because he could have definitely put it on me. And I remember he was like, hey, we're coming back, around this time tomorrow. And they knew I had good wrestling. I had a good wrestling pedigree. And then his manager at the time, who became my manager later on, Kami asked me, hey, like, we need Cubs grappling and wrestling stuff down. I think he was getting ready for Crone Gracie. So they wanted me to work with him in this wrestling and get rounds with him. So I started working with him to get him ready for Crone in terms of takedowns and stuff. And then his manager ended up signing me before he passed away. And so I got signed to that crew. So, yeah, I just was coming in and I was trying to, hey, if I could help guys and just to get training in. And it was Mark Munoz was helping out. It was around, like, TJ was there at the time. Archuleta was there. Cub was there. And then he gave me rounds and he was like, hey, I need you to help me get ready for Crone and try to take me down. And I'm going to try to not let you take me down. So I was like, all right, let's do it. And then he helped me out and I got in that mix and got in the room and people, I think I'm a good training partner. I'm good at helping guys if they need help in areas and I'm pretty self-aware. I can match the energy and level. So typically guys wanted to work with me around that time. So yeah, I got linked up with Cub, his manager, Kami, rest in peace, signed me right before he passed away. And then that's how I was emerged with Cub and that crew.
In my opinion, you're one of the most underrated guys on the regional scene, man. When you look at your topology, it's absolutely insane. Some of these guys that you fought. You mentioned Jose Delgado. He's doing big things in the UFC now. You look at Jay Perrin. You look at Jose Faria. You look at Javier Reyes. No one wanted to fight that guy.
Yeah.
How much pride do you take in fighting the toughest competition out there?
I take a bunch of pride in it, and it's not, like you said, it's one of those things where, I just know when it pops and I get signed to a bigger org, I didn't get, a 7-7 guy before I called up to the UFC. I've been fighting killers. And I just think it's a blessing in disguise because when, you'll see it sometimes when guys, get favorable matchups on the regional scene, they, get a bunch of finishes on guys who aren't that good. And then they get called up to the UFC. And sometimes when they first fight a guy who really wants to fight and can really fight and try to hurt you, you can kind of see it on their face. They get a little bit shocked. if they've never been really in a fight before. But I mean, like you said, I've been tested with high level guys who are in the UFC or who left the UFC or were on the verge of the UFC, and I fought them. And it's just a testament, to what I'm about. And, things don't always happen right away, but eventually the truth always comes out in a lot of things. And so I just know if I stay steady and keep doing what I'm doing, fighting the really good guys and beating them, that, eventually my time will come. And you just see it like, for example, Ethan Ewing, I just use him as an example because he'll come and train with us at Bloodline, and, me and him have the same boxing coach. And he was on he was on the regional scene, and then he got called up a week later and beat Malcolm. Why am I blanking? What's his last name? Malcolm Wellmaker. Yeah, beat Wellmaker, and then beat the other undefeated guy from Brazil. And people are like, "Oh man," I'm like, he was just on the regional scene last week. It wasn't like he made some jump in a week. He was on the regional scene, kicking ass, got called up, and then kicked more ass, and then continues to kick ass. So it's not like a mystery. There's plenty of guys out there. So I just know if I keep doing my thing and plugging away and getting better at fighting, that, my time will come. I'm not worried about it.
Your last time out took on Eric Viscondi, obviously a big fight. A lot of maybe people saying the big win over there, get yourself the Contender Series. Viscondi now rumored to be on the Contender. Obviously didn't go your way, but what were some of the takeaways after that?
Yeah, it was a good fight. No excuses. The dude got me. It was a doctor stoppage. So, we were going in that third round, 1-1 probably, or maybe 2-0, 1-1, depending on who you ask. And then the doctor, my face was swollen because I broke my nose. I fractured my nose on a little elbow. And then when I blew it and we were, fighting and wrestling, my eyes started to swell shut. So it was unfortunate that my eye closed, couldn't see out of it. And then the doctor stopped it, which it is what it is. But the guy was tough. There was some good technical stuff I took away from it. Certain, hey, closing distance on guys who are a little bit shorter, I got to fix that, and little things that maybe I think the way I am and, coming from, like I said, wrestling, we're very, the sport of wrestling and just how you're trained is to be very critical of yourself at all times, win or lose. And so even when I win, I'm critical of myself, but especially when I lose, like little technical things to even avoid it from getting to that spot. But yeah, the dude was tough. He was game. It was unfortunate the doctor stopped it going in the third round, but the guy got the dub on me, and, that's that. But I got a chance to, like I said, go back, fix things, and use everything as a way to improve. No excuses ever, never a victim. So yeah, there's things I had to get better at, and that exposed it, and I've been getting better at it since that fight. So yeah.
The life of a fighter, it's a roller coaster, man. You've experienced all these highs and it goes down, experience lows. For you, how do you think you have grown and evolved as a person from competing in combat sports?
Immensely. It wouldn't even make sense if you talked about, words couldn't describe it, because, it's just, like you said, the ups and downs, those forge you, and those, you either, like you said earlier, like if I were to quit when it wasn't going my way, then I don't get the lessons that I get down the road. And I think in my heart, I know that's a huge part of the package deal is you can get these blessings and wins and glory and money, whatever all that stuff is, but you're gonna have to learn some lessons along the way. So that's why when it doesn't go my way, I'm like, nah, now it's not the time to quit. You got to figure out what it's trying to teach you. And even, like after the Viscondi fight, I was in a car accident that was really bad. I had 2 health scares. I was in the hospital. I had fights booked. Week before the fight, was hospitalized. So it was rough. I was going through it, and the whole time it was my mind battling, and you only get stronger. It either kills you and you quit and then you roll it up, or you get stronger. So, MMA reveals that. And then ultimately at the end of the day, when I call it a day, and like any other fighter, when you call it a career, you have that, you have all the stuff you gain from it, the connections, the money, all that. But then people are going to forget you. Every generation wants their new hero. You're not going to be remembered forever. So those lessons are a big part of why you're doing it, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. But, all the other stuff, it eventually fades. And so if that's why you did it, then you're kind of missing out on a large chunk of it. So, all of this and that, you got to take it as part of the game. And you always, for me, how I see it is always got to find the lesson in it. Like I said, the loss that I was bitter about. Okay, what's the lesson? Okay, these things I could have even avoided getting hit if I would have done this right, and I could have dominated and whatever. Didn't do it. Got to learn how to do that. And then other things where have a fight coming up, bam, I go to the hospital. Okay, another fight coming up, bam, go to the hospital. okay, what's that telling me? Maybe I need to restructure some things in my training, pull back on things, not go, go, go all the time. I get sick and whatever. So I'm always learning and, fighting just because it's so extreme and primal. Maybe that's probably not the best word to describe it. But, if you just go through life at medium heat, you'll just never face those things because life is just in the middle and, it's never bad, but it's never great. It's just, things are good and it's safe and which is fine, but you'll miss a lot of lessons where when you put yourself out in the fire and in the mix and then, don't live life on the bleachers, you're in the game, you're going to get those lessons, but then with it, you get great, accomplish great things. So that's how I reframe it in my mind. When you go through some rough stuff, I'm like, hey, what can you learn from this? And then even though most of the time it doesn't feel good, you take those lessons and then you apply them and then down the road, good things are going to happen. And then you're like, oh, okay, there's a reason I went through that. Now I'm better. So that's how I look at it.
So you're getting ready to make your return Friday night. This fight's probably one of the most anticipated fights for me personally on the regional scene this year.
Hell
I can't wait to watch this. You're taking on Manuel Exposito, a guy who had an amazing fight against Delano in the Contender Series last year. Overall, what do you think of him as the opponent?
Great opponent. Like you said, great fight on Contender Series. He's fought since then. Tough dude, comes forward, throws bombs, controlling on the ground, good takedowns, good ground and pound, throws heat on the feet. So it's going to be a great fight. We're going to come in there and I'm going to throw heat too, and I'm good on the ground too. So it's going to be a battle of wills. And like I said before, victory through attrition, and may the best dog win.
Both of you guys coming off of layoffs here around a year. The fact that both of you are coming off on layoffs that are kind of long, do you think that's like a fair playing field?
It depends on what you do in that layoff, but that's good. I don't know him like that. I don't know anybody in his camp, but I'm just going to assume that he's been in a cave getting ready, just like I have. And so, I'm ready for battle. No doubt about it. I'm expecting him to bring that, and yeah, it's going to be on.
It's interesting where we're at right now in the year. It is going to be the second week of the Dana White Contender Series on Tuesday. Obviously, with a big win here, there's 8 weeks left. Are we thinking maybe we be on that show sometime this year?
Sure. I know my managers are, my coaches are, and I tell them, hey, I'm the horse in the race. It's not my job. For me, how I think about it, like I need to go out there in the cage and execute. And like Visconti last year, before that fight, hey, if you win this, contenders, this and that, I didn't win the fight. So none of that. So how I approach it as just a fighter and competitor, I'm like, my job is to go out there to make weight, and then the next day go out and try to execute this guy. And if I do that, I just know good things are going to happen. So yeah, I don't think you're wrong, but I leave that thought and the future stuff to my managers and my coaches, and they know that. And I could tell sometimes they want to talk to me about it. And I go, hey, if you know me well enough, don't even talk to me about that. I got to go and execute the guy in front of me. Because if I don't do that, then none of it happens. So that's how I've at least done it. And that's how, I've had a 25-year athletic career. That's how I've just done my best when I'm focused on immediately the guy in front of me. So, but I wouldn't say you're wrong.
Absolutely. We talked about earlier how this sport has come and grown and evolved. There's so many eyeballs on it now. We have a term now called the casual fan. And before I get into this, all fans are good fans. We need as much love as we can get. But sometimes you're at the bar, you hear twist them, and you read this stuff, you hear this stuff. So many keyboard warriors now. What do you take of all this craziness?
I don't really. None of it surprises me. Just like anything, if you don't know about something, then your opinion when it comes to it isn't going to be a very layered opinion. And that's fine. Because if I was watching basketball at the bar during the NBA finals and I'm like, how can he make that shot? And someone who played basketball for years, like, do you know how hard it is to make that shot against a defender? And I'd say no. And I don't. But I'm honest about it. So as long as you're honest about who you are and what you know, you can enjoy fighting and you can say twist them in the what. But if you let that as a fighter get to you, then you just haven't observed the situation clearly enough, in my opinion. You can't expect someone to know about it if they've never done it or trained in it, just like I said, if I was watching the NBA finals or Super Bowl and I'm like, just throw the ball, make it, score a touchdown. What are you doing? And people who played football at a high level or basketball would be like, are you stupid? You know how hard it is to do that? But if they did that with everybody, you'd have no energy. So when people are doing that, if they're around me, if they're my friend, if they're a friend of mine, then I might say something like, hey, I'll explain why this isn't happening. But if they're enjoying the fights, like I said, and they're supporting MMA, just because I did watch MMA in '02 was when I kind of started watching MMA, and I was going to school trying to tell people about it. And people are like, what? What is this? So now that people will come up and talk to me about it, I'm like, damn, that's awesome. But you can't expect everyone to have a, black belt knowledge on something that they just watch on the weekends. So no fault. I mean, yeah, no foul, no harm, in my opinion.
I think for the most part, the casuals are starting to understand that guys like you are trying to get bigger fights in the regional scene, to get the Qatar series, get in the UFC, get bigger fights with belts, money, all that. But in my opinion, very few people understand the fight outside the fight. And to me, that's that fight not to clock in at 9 o'clock in the morning, clock out at 5. That's that fight to secure financial freedom. It's the fight to live life on your terms. For you, has this been a big part of the journey?
Absolutely. Absolutely. For sure. And, yeah, like I said, if I was in it to make money and get famous, there's a lot easier ways to get famous and a lot easier ways to make big money. So I'm doing this because it's part of my journey. And like you just said, I live life on my terms and I get to do something I love. And, when you go and if you just think and, if you go to I tell someone, I'm like, when you go to a funeral and then you go to someone's funeral and at the end of the funeral and everyone's just telling stories about this person's life and what they did, rarely was it about maybe a job they did for a long time, unless, they did something in that job that was, reputable or whatever. It's more about like experiences they had in life. So I'm like, okay, at the end of the day, they're going to throw the dirt on the box on me, just like they've done everybody else. And that's it. And that's your only chance. So I'm not going to go to that in fear and not chase my dreams because I'm afraid or because I need some tokens. I just know if I do what I'm supposed to do and I do it well, that whatever's watching out for me or over me, it's going to look out for me. But I got to do it and I got to really sacrifice and give it my all and I'll be looked out for. Just like I have my whole life. There's been plenty of moments my whole life growing up. We didn't know what the future was and I've sacrificed a lot and trained a lot and done a lot. And then miracles, it's what seems like miracles happen. So I'm keeping that mindset.
For you, what's your ultimate goal? What do you want to accomplish in this sport?
Just tangible stuff is I want to be a world champion. I've achieved a lot in wrestling and stuff, but I never competed on the world stage, and I just think every level I've had in my life competitively, the next step I've always done better than the one before. And so I was a Division I All-American multiple times, competed on the national scene, one of the top guys in the country. And so I've learned a lot of lessons, and I've done things better and smarter than I did when I was in my 20s competing. So I go, okay, you're going to have to sacrifice even more than you thought possible, but at the end of that, you're going to be a world champion. And then at the end of that, I know I'll have opportunities to, do things and set my family straight and be a provider for my family and people I love. That's the ultimate goal at the end of that. So, but do it. So at the very, very end, when I say I'm done, I'm happy. I'm proud. That's ultimately the goal.
Throughout your career, obviously, we've seen you involved in skill fights and all that. We've also seen your hair change. For a while, you had that long hair. Now it's bye-bye.
Yeah.
You're going back to the long hair? Is this going to be a permanent look?
I told myself, I go, hey, once you get to the UFC, I'm like, we'll start growing the hair out again. That'll be how I keep track of time. Just let my hair grow out. That's how I knew. I'm like, oh, it's been like 3 years since this thing. And they're like, how do you know? I'm like, I stopped cutting my hair. So this is 3 years of hair growth. And so that's how I keep track of time is what I tell people. So that's been my thing to myself. I go, okay, once I get in the UFC, that'll be my little, all right, no more haircuts. Let's see how long this chapter goes. So that was a light promise I made to myself. We'll see.
We'll see. All right, last question, Chris. In a perfect world, what is the outcome Friday night when you make your return? LFA 239 against Manuel Exposito.
A violent finish for me, for my fans, for the promoters, and to remind people after a layoff, what I'm about and what I'm capable of. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Chris, man, thank you so much. Been wanting to talk to you for a long time, man. Glad we could make this happen. And I wish you the best, my brother.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the support and, love it. You're a knowledgeable reporter and you know what's up. And I wish your success as well because you know what's going on. So I appreciate you.
Thank you, man. Well, that's it for us today. I'm Carl Persings, Mr. Chris Mecate. You can watch him Friday night, LFA 239 headliner taking on Manuel Exposito. Don't blink, fight fans. It's going to be a fun one. Take care.
Let's go.